Here's something that will blow your mind. While modern hikers and climbers get frostbite in -20-degree weather, even wearing $2,000 gear, traditional Inuit hunters worked all day in -60 degrees. And here's the crazy part. They stayed completely comfortable using clothes they made by hand. Early doctors who visited Arctic communities wrote reports that shocked the medical world. Frostbite among traditional Inuit people? Almost never happened. Think about that for a second. Today, outdoor lovers spend fortunes on high-tech winter gear. They buy fancy synthetic jackets. They trust space-age materials, but cold weather injuries? Still super common. Meanwhile, Inuit hunters spent 12+ hours sitting on frozen ocean ice, waiting for seals. Temperature? 60 below zero. Wind chill? Sometimes hitting 100 below. And they stayed warm using animal hides and ancient knowledge. This isn't some romantic story about the past. This is proven, tested, life-saving knowledge that actually works better than modern technology. Watch this scene unfold in your mind. The Arctic in deep winter. Darkness covers everything. The sun won't rise for months. Ice stretches as far as you can see in every direction. The ocean froze solid beneath a blanket of snow. Temperature sits at 55 below zero. Wind pushes across the frozen sea, making the cold cut right through anything weak. Now see an Inuit hunter walking across this frozen world. He moves with purpose toward the sea ice, where seals breathe through small holes. Aurora borealis dances green and purple overhead, giving just enough light to see by. The hunter's breath should fog the air in thick clouds, but it doesn't. Just tiny wisps of vapour. That's your first clue something special is happening. Listen to the sounds. Ice cracks and groans under pressure from the ocean below. Wind whistles, but not loud, just a steady presence. Otherwise, absolute samsa, the kind of quiet that only exists in the coldest places on Earth. The air itself feels different here, so dry and cold it almost doesn't feel real. The hunter stops at a seal's breathing hole. Now comes the incredible part. He'll sit here nearly motionless for hours, maybe 6 hours, maybe 12, in -60-degree cold, on ice, feel what he's all wearing. Caribou hide against his skin, fur side in. It's loose, not tight. Air gaps between his body and the clothing. Another layer over that, fur side out this time. Again, loose and easy. His hands move slowly, checking everything. Subtle finger movements you'd barely notice. He adjusts his breathing, slow, steady, always through his nose. His posture looks relaxed, but it's actually perfectly positioned. Every detail has a purpose, every choice keeps him alive. This hunter isn't just tough, he's not powering through the cold, he's actually comfortable. His body stays warm using 4 specific techniques that scientists didn't understand until recently. Here's where it gets really interesting. Modern military forces pay researchers tens of thousands of dollars to study exactly what this hunter knows by heart. The US Navy runs Arctic warfare training programs. Canadian Rangers, many of them indigenous people who still use these methods, teach soldiers how to survive extreme cold. Polar expedition leaders who used to trust expensive modern gear, they now learn traditional Inuit techniques before attempting dangerous trips. Why? Because when modern equipment fails, traditional knowledge still works. Navy Arctic training manuals now include sections on indigenous cold weather methods. They had to admit the old ways worked better. Canadian military runs something called Indigenous Cold Weather Training Programs, elite soldiers learning from ancient knowledge. Everest climbers who faced unexpected storms have survived using Inuit breathing techniques. The proof keeps piling up. Scientists finally tested traditional caribou hide clothing against modern synthetic materials. The results shocked them. Traditional layering worked 400% better at 40 below zero. 4 times better. Not a little improvement, a massive difference. Modern material science, beaten by knowledge that's 4,000 years old. So what exactly is this hunter doing? 4 specific techniques keep him warm. You're going to learn all of them in detail, but here's the preview. First, the layered air trapping system. It's not about thick, heavy clothing. It's about creating air pockets that trap heat. Specific gaps between loose layers. This one trick alone beats expensive modern jackets. Second, extremity circulation methods. Tiny movements that keep blood flowing to fingers and toes without burning calories. Nearly invisible to watch, but incredibly effective. Your hands and feet stay warm for hours. Third, breathing heat recovery. How you breathe changes everything in extreme cold. Breathe wrong and you lose massive amounts of body heat. Breathe right and you recapture warmth that would otherwise vanish into freezing air. Fourth, metabolic fire maintenance. What you eat, when you eat it, and how your body processes food to generate internal heat. Traditional Inuit people understood this better than modern nutritionists. These aren't complicated tricks that take years to master. You can test the breathing technique in your freezer tonight. Seriously, you'll feel the difference immediately. The hunter on the ice knows all this without thinking about it. He learned as a child watching his father and grandfather. His people developed this knowledge over 4,000 years. 4,000 years of winters, 4,000 years of testing what works and what kills you. Generation after generation adding small improvements, removing mistakes, perfecting every detail. The Inuit peoples, spread across Arctic Canada, Alaska and Greenland, faced the harshest environment humans have ever lived in permanently. The Inuvialuit in Canada's Western Arctic, the Kalaalleq in Greenland, the Inupiat in northern Alaska. Different groups, similar key challenges. They all developed sophisticated solutions to one basic problem. How do you stay warm when the world around you wants to freeze you solid? Their answer? Pure genius, smart engineering wrapped in deep understanding of how bodies, materials and heat actually work. Modern science is only now catching up to what they figured out thousands of years ago. But here's the question that should make you curious. These remarkable innovations didn't just appear overnight. Nobody woke up one morning knowing the perfect way to survive 60 below zero cold. So how did it develop? What was the process? What challenges forced these breakthroughs? And why does this ancient knowledge still beat modern technology? To understand why Inuit body heat techniques work so perfectly, we need to journey back 4,000 years. Back to when the first Arctic peoples faced the ultimate survival question: adapt completely or die in the most unforgiving environment on Earth. What happened next created the most sophisticated cold weather survival knowledge humanity has ever developed. And that story, that's where we're going next. Travel back 4,500 years. That's 2,500 years before the Common Era began. Small groups of people arrive at the edge of the Arctic, the frozen north, a place so harsh, so unforgiving that survival seems impossible. Yet these people, the ancestors of today's Inuit, don't just survive. They figure out how to thrive in conditions that would kill most humans in under 20 minutes. This is where one of humanity's greatest survival stories begins. Meet the pre-Dorset people. They arrived in the Arctic around 2500 BCE. These early inhabitants faced immediate deadly challenges. 9-month winters, temperatures dropping to 40 below zero regularly, wind that could freeze exposed skin in seconds. And here's the impossible part. They had to stay warm while still being able to move and hunt. You can't catch food if you're bundled up so tight you can't bend your arms. So they started innovating, testing, learning what worked and what killed you. For 2,000 years, the pre-Dorset culture refined their methods. Then around 500 BCE, something remarkable happened. A new culture emerged, the Dorset people. They took everything the pre-Dorset learned and pushed it further. Better tools, smarter clothing designs, deeper understanding of how to manage body heat in extreme cold. The Dorset culture lasted 1,500 years. Think about that. 15 centuries of continuous innovation, testing and refinement. Generations of hunters adding small improvements. Elders sharing hard-won knowledge with children. Every winter became a classroom where mistakes meant death and success meant survival. Then around 1000 CE, about 1,000 years ago, the Thill people arrived. They migrated from Alaska, bringing the most advanced Arctic survival techniques yet developed. The Thill are the direct ancestors of modern Inuit peoples, and the knowledge they carried? It represented the culmination of thousands of years of Arctic innovation. Watch this timeline unfold in your mind. See a small coastal settlement in 2500 BCE. Simple shelters made of stone and bone. People wearing basic animal hides, still learning, still experimenting. Many don't survive their first winter. Now jump forward to 500 CE, a Dorset winter camp. The clothing has changed dramatically. Layered systems now, not just wrapped hides. Tools show sophisticated understanding of materials. Success rates are climbing. Fast forward to 1500 CE, a Thulu whaling camp on the frozen ocean. Hunters sit comfortably on the ice for 12 hours at minus 50 degrees. Their clothing represents 2,000 years of refinement, every stitch placed for a reason, every material chosen through generations of testing. This is peak Arctic survival knowledge. But here's what makes this even more incredible. That knowledge didn't stop in 1500 CE. It continued evolving right up to today. Modern Inuit communities still use and adapt these traditional techniques, combining ancient wisdom with contemporary knowledge. Now understand the pressure that drove all this innovation. The Arctic isn't just cold, it's the most challenging environment humans have ever lived in permanently. Winter lasts 9 months or more, not cute, snowy calendar winter, real winter. The kind where temperatures average minus 30 to minus 40 degrees, where extremes hit minus 60, where wind chill can reach minus 100, where the sun doesn't rise for months, leaving you in near total darkness. Feel what that environment demands. You need to stay warm, but you also need to hunt. Animals are scarce in winter, so you might sit motionless on the ice for 8, 10, 12 hours waiting for a seal to surface. You can't shiver. Shivering wastes precious calories you might not be able to replace. You can't sweat. In extreme cold, sweat equals death. It wets your clothing, destroys insulation, and freezes against your skin. So the challenge becomes, how do you generate enough heat to survive without generating so much that you sweat? How do you stay warm while sitting perfectly still? How do you keep your fingers functioning so you can handle weapons and tools? These aren't abstract problems. These are life or death questions that had to be answered every single day. And the Inuit peoples answered them brilliantly. Their solution? A complete system of heat management that modern scientists are only now beginning to fully understand. Then in 1972, something amazing happened. 2 brothers hunting in Greenland near a place called Kilakitsok found something incredible. 8 mummies preserved by the dry, cold Arctic conditions. 6 women and 2 children. And the really shocking part? Their clothing was almost perfectly intact. Researchers carefully examined the 500-year-old garments. What they found made them rethink everything they thought they knew about Arctic survival. The clothing showed a layering system so sophisticated, so precisely designed, that modern cold weather gear still can't match it. Look closely at what those researchers saw. Multiple layers, each one loose-fitting. Caribou hide with fur facing different directions on different layers. Strategic air gaps maintained by the cut and construction of each garment. Stitching using sinew that stayed flexible even when frozen. Hood designs that created microclimates around the face. Every single detail had a purpose proven through centuries of use. These weren't crude, simple clothes made by primitive people. These were precision-engineered thermal management systems that would make modern clothing designers jealous. The Kilakitsok discovery proved what Inuit people already knew. Their ancestors were sophisticated engineers who understood heat, insulation, and human physiology at a level that European science wouldn't reach for another 500 years. But here's what might be even more impressive than the techniques themselves. How that knowledge got passed down. Watch a scene from any time in the last 4,000 years. An elder sits with a small child, maybe 4 or 5 years old. Too young for school by modern standards, but in the Arctic, learning starts early. It has to. The elder's hands move slowly, demonstrating tiny finger movements. The child watches, tries to copy, fails, tries again. No rushing, no anger, just patient teaching, because this knowledge could save the child's life someday. This happened for generations, thousands of times, creating an unbroken chain of knowledge stretching back millennia. Inuit knowledge transmission wasn't random, it was precise, systematic, and incredibly effective. Children started learning as soon as they could understand. Not from books, from watching, doing, and being corrected by people who had spent 60-plus years perfecting these skills. Elders with decades of experience became specialized knowledge holders, walking libraries of survival wisdom. And the teaching matched the seasons. You learned ice safety in fall when ice first formed. You learned extreme cold techniques in deep winter. You learned moisture management during spring thaw. Every season brought its lessons. The whole community shared knowledge. If someone discovered a better way to do something, that innovation spread. Visitors from other camps brought new ideas. Families shared what worked. Within a generation, a clever innovation from one village could travel 1,000 miles across the Arctic. Compare that to European cold weather technology development. Europeans didn't seriously attempt to understand Arctic survival until the 1800s, and when they did, they struggled, they suffered. They died from cold in conditions that Inuit hunters considered routine. Early polar expeditions were disasters because European explorers ignored traditional knowledge and trusted their own superior technology. It took Europeans centuries to develop what Inuit peoples had already perfected. The knowledge kept evolving through different approaches across regions. Canadian Central Arctic Inuit developed techniques for the most extreme cold, places where -60 was common, where sitting still for hours was required for seal hunting. Their methods emphasised maximum heat retention with minimal calorie expenditure. Greenlandic Inuit faced constant high winds on exposed coasts. They innovated windproof outer layers and techniques for managing air gaps in wind. Their sealskin outer garments shed them moisture while maintaining insulation. Alaskan Inuit dealt with transitional zones, places where Arctic met subarctic. They developed flexible techniques that could adapt quickly to changing conditions, some days -40, next day -10 with rain. Their methods had to handle both. Different environments, different materials available, different game animals, but the same core principles: manage heat without wasting energy, stay dry, maintain mobility, survive. Today this knowledge continues living and growing. Modern Inuit communities still use traditional techniques, not because they don't have access to modern technology, they do. They use them because they work better. A hunter might carry a satellite phone but wear traditional layered caribou hide because it outperforms synthetic materials. UNESCO now recognises Inuit traditional knowledge as a valuable, sophisticated knowledge system that contributes to human understanding. Universities study it, anthropologists document it, climate scientists consult with Inuit knowledge keepers because traditional ecological knowledge provides insights that modern science needs. Cold weather equipment designers work with Inuit elders to understand principles that might improve modern gear. Military programs hire Inuit instructors to teach soldiers Arctic survival. The knowledge that started 4,500 years ago is still teaching us today. For 4,000 years, this knowledge was refined through countless winters, tested by thousands of hunters, perfected through the harshest classroom on Earth, improved by generation after generation of careful observation, brave experimentation, and hard-won wisdom. Now you're about to learn the exact techniques that allowed humans not just to survive, but to thrive in conditions that would kill an unprepared person in under 20 minutes. Let's start with the foundation, the revolutionary layering system that modern science didn't understand until the 1990s. Now comes the moment you've been waiting for, the actual techniques that kept Inuit hunters alive and comfortable in killing cold. 4 methods, each one proven over thousands of years, each one backed by the modern science, and each one you can start learning today. But here's the critical part. These techniques work as a system. Miss one detail and you could freeze in 30 minutes. Get it right and you'll stay warm for 12 hours at 40 below. The difference between life and death sometimes comes down to a 1-inch air gap or breathing through your nose instead of your mouth. Let's break down each technique step by step. Technique 1. The multi-layer air trapping system. Picture an Inuit hunter getting dressed for a winter seal hunt. Watch his hands carefully. He's not just putting on clothes, he's building a heat management system. First comes the inner layer. In Inuktitut, the Inuit language, this is called the atigi, though the exact word varies across different Inuit regions. This is caribou hide worn with the fur facing inward, against the skin. But notice how he wears it. Not tight, not snug, loose. Really loose. Look at the gap between the fur and his skin. 1 to 2 inches of space. Airspace. And that airspace is the secret. Now the outer layer. The klitak, the outer parka. A gayan, caribou hide, but this time fur facing outward. And again, loose. Very loose. Watch the gap between the inner layer and outer layer. 2 to 3 inches of air between them. Why does this work so incredibly well? It's all about the air. Still air is one of nature's best insulators, better than most materials we can manufacture. That air trapped between layers creates a thermal buffer zone. Your body heat warms the air closest to your skin. That warm air stays trapped in the gap. The outer layer of air provides another barrier. Heat has to travel through multiple air zones to escape, and that slows heat loss dramatically. But here's the critical detail most people miss. The layers must stay loose. If they compress against your body or against each other, you lose the air gaps. No air gaps means no insulation. Compression destroys the entire system. That's why modern tight-fitting winter clothes often fail. They eliminate the air spaces that provide the real insulation. Now look closer at the material itself, caribou hide. Each individual hair is hollow, completely hollow inside like a tiny straw filled with air. Thousands of these hollow hairs create thousands of microscopic air pockets. So you've got air insulation at 3 levels, inside each hair, between the hairs, and in the gaps between clothing layers. Modern materials scientists tested caribou hide against advanced synthetic insulation. The results shocked them. At 40 degrees below zero, traditional caribou layering retained heat multiple times better than modern materials, and it showed zero internal moisture buildup while synthetic materials accumulated condensation that then froze. Caribou hide has other advantages too. It stays flexible even when frozen solid. Most materials become stiff and brittle in extreme cold, but caribou hide remains pliable. The natural structure resists moisture absorption. Water beads off rather than soaking in, and it's durable enough to last years with proper care. The preparation of these hides was an art form itself. Traditional hide preparation involved careful scraping to remove excess oils that could trap moisture. The fur direction mattered, positioned to shed water and maximize insulation. Stitching used sinew from caribou or seal. Why sinew? Because it won't crack or break when frozen, unlike thread made from plant fibers. Every detail had a reason, proven through generations of testing in the most unforgiving laboratory on Earth. Get this system right and you've got the foundation of Arctic survival. Get it wired wrong, wear layers too tight, use the wrong materials, compress the air gaps, and then you're in serious trouble fast. Modern military programs spent 20 years and millions of dollars trying to replicate this system. They still haven't fully matched what Inuit peoples perfected centuries ago. Technique 2. The extremity circulation method. Now watch an Inuit hunter's hands during a 12-hour seal hunt. At first glance he looks completely still, motionless, waiting, but look closer at his fingers. They are moving, barely visible movements, tiny flexions, almost imperceptible unless you know what to watch for. This is the extremity circulation method. Your fingers and toes are your biggest challenge in extreme cold. They're farthest from your heart. Smallest blood vessels. They get cold first, lose circulation, and you get frostbite fast. But here's the problem. Moving too much burns calories you might not be able to replace. Big movements generate sweat, and sweat will kill you in extreme cold. The Inuit solution? Small, subtle movements that maintain blood flow without wasting energy or generating sweat. Here's the finger technique. Slowly flex your fingers closed. Not a fist, just a gentle curl. Hold for 3 seconds. Feel the muscles working. Now release for 2 seconds. Relax completely. Then repeat. Flex 3 seconds, relax 2 seconds, over and over. These tiny movements contract the muscles just enough to push blood through your fingers. The muscle contractions massage the blood vessels, keeping blood flowing to fingertips and preventing that dangerous cold from setting in. But the movements are so small, so subtle they barely burn any calories. No sweating, no energy waste. Try this right now. Flex your fingers gently. 3 seconds hold, 2 seconds release. Do it for 1 minute. Feel the warmth building in your hands. That's increased blood flow. That's the technique working. Now the feet. Toes curl in a similar pattern. Curl your toes inside your boots. Hold for 3 seconds, release for 2, repeat. The movement is even more subtle than the fingers. No one watching could tell you're doing anything. But inside your boots, blood is flowing, warmth is spreading, frostbite is being prevented. Add gentle ankle rotations, small circles, tiny movements. Again, barely visible but incredibly effective at maintaining circulation. Traditional teaching emphasised recognising the early warning signs of circulation loss. That pins and needles feeling. Numbness starting. Colour change in fingers from pink to white. Children learn to notice these signals and immediately start the circulation movements before real damage began. Elders taught this skill progressively. First in warm conditions so children could learn the movements, then in mild cold, then more extreme conditions. By the time a young person went on their first serious winter hunt, these movements were automatic. No thinking required. Muscle memory took over. Modern military snipers now learn adapted versions of these exact techniques. A sniper might hold position for hours in cold conditions, Can't move obviously, or they'll be spotted, but they need working fingers to pull a trigger. So special operations programs teach circulation maintenance methods derived directly from traditional Inuit knowledge. Small movements, sustained circulation, working hands when needed. Mountain rescue professionals use the same techniques during long searches and cold conditions. The methods work just as well today as they did 1,000 years ago. Technique 3. The breathing heat recovery system. Watch the hunter's breath in the extreme cold. If you or I sat on that ice, our breath would fog the air in huge white clouds. Each exhale would dump massive amounts of heat into the atmosphere. Wasted. But look at the hunter's breath. Just see tiny wisps of vapour. Almost nothing. What's the difference? How he breathes, nasal breathing's absolutely mandatory in extreme cold. Your nose is a remarkable piece of biological engineering. When you breathe in through your nose, the air travels through passages lined with blood vessels. These passages warm the incoming air before it reaches your lungs. How much warming? 15 to 25 degrees Fahrenheit. Think about that. If you're breathing air that's 50 below zero, your nose warms it to 25 or 30 below before it enters your lungs. That's huge heat savings. Your body doesn't have to work nearly as hard to warm that air to body temperature. But mouth breathing, the air goes straight to your lungs cold. Your body has to burn calories warming that freezing air. Over hours, that's massive energy waste. Energy you might desperately need. There's more. When you exhale through your nose, some of that heat gets recovered. The structures in your nose, called turbinates, act like heat exchangers. Exhaled warm air passes through, warming those structures. Next inhale, that warmth transfers back to incoming air. It's a natural heat recovery system. Mouth breathing dumps all that heat straight into the atmosphere. Gone. Ways. Sakat the breathing rhythm. Traditional hunters breathed slowly, 8 to 10 breaths per minute instead of the normal 12 to 16. Slower, deeper breaths. This maximizes heat exchange efficiency. Each breath has more time in the nasal passages, more warming, more heat recovery. The hunter combines this with strategic face positioning. The traditional Parker hood design is genius-level engineering. Watch how the hood creates a microclimate around the face. It's not tight, there's space around the head, but it's designed to capture some of that exhaled warmth and redirect it. The hood opening can be adjusted. Make it smaller in extreme cold to capture more heat. Larger when conditions moderate or when exertion increases. The hunter constantly fine-tunes this adjustment throughout the day. Here's another critical benefit of proper breathing. Moisture management. In extreme cold, moisture is deadly. If your breath condenses on your clothing and freezes, you've got ice buildup. Ice destroys insulation. Ice against skin causes frostbite. Ice adds weight. Nasal breathing with proper hood positioning directs moisture away from critical clothing areas. The vapor escapes without condensing on fur or forming dangerous ice buildup. Mouth breathing, especially heavy breathing, creates much more moisture vapor that tends to freeze on everything nearby. Researchers measured the temperature difference. Proper nasal breathing with traditional hood design maintains core body temperature about 2 degrees Fahrenheit warmer than mouth breathing over several hours. 2 degrees might not sound like much, but in extreme cold, that 2-degree difference can determine whether you live or die. Scientists couldn't fully explain all the mechanisms of traditional breathing techniques until the 2000s, when advanced heat exchange efficiency measurements became possible. Turns out what Inuit peoples knew intuitively for centuries was more sophisticated than researchers initially thought. Technique 4, metabolic fire maintenance. Picture the morning before a winter hunt. The hunter eats a lot, but not just any food. Specific foods at specific times. What looks like a simple meal is actually strategic fuel loading, based on deep understanding of how the human body generates heat. Food creates heat when your body digests it. This is called thermogenesis, heat generation. But different foods create different amounts of heat at different rates. Fat is the foundation of Arctic metabolic heat management. Traditional Inuit diet included large amounts of fat from marine mammals and caribou. Seal blubber, whale fat, caribou fat. These aren't just calories, they're slow-burning fuel that generates sustained internal heat. When you eat fat, your body metabolizes it gradually over many hours. That metabolism produces heat as a byproduct. Eat enough fat before cold exposure and your body becomes a slow-burning furnace, generating warmth from the inside for 10, 12, even 14 hours. Before a long hunt, the hunter would consume significant amounts of fat. This is called caloric front-loading. Load up the fuel before you need it. Then your body burns that fuel steadily throughout the cold exposure, generating heat the entire time. Protein adds another dimension. Lean meat, caribou, seal meat without much whey, has something called a high thermic effect. Your body actually burns a lot of calories just digesting protein. Up to 20 to 30% of the calories in protein get burned as heat during the digestion process itself. Strategic protein consumption during cold exposure creates digestive heat during critical periods. The hunter might eat some lean meat mid-hunt. The digestion process generates a pulse of warmth exactly when needed. Then there's the technique that seems completely backwards, consuming ice or snow. Why would you eat something cold when you're trying to stay warm? Because your body responds to that cold with increased heat generation. It's called cold-induced thermogenesis. Your body ramps up internal heat production to compensate for the cold material you consumed. The timing matters. Small amounts of ice or snow at specific intervals. Not constantly, that would work against you. But strategically, it triggers beneficial metabolic responses. The traditional diet maintained this heat generation for the extraordinary periods. 12 plus hours sitting on ice at 40, 50, 60 below zero. No hot drinks, no fire, no external heat source, just internal heat from strategic food consumption. Modern nutritionists study traditional Arctic diets and find sophisticated metabolic management they're only now beginning to fully understand. Contemporary sports science research confirms these traditional principles. Endurance athletes in cold conditions now use fat loading and protein timing strategies that mirror traditional Inuit practices. Special operations military nutrition programs have adopted similar approaches for cold weather operations. One documented case tells of a hunter who got caught in an unexpected overnight storm. No shelter. Temperature dropped to 55 below zero. Winds picked up. He survived purely through the metabolic heat from his pre-hunt meal and knowledge of how to position his body and control his breathing to conserve that internally generated warmth. When found the next day, he was cold and tired but alive, with no frostbite. That's the power of understanding metabolic heat maintenance, putting it all together. Now watch a hunter who's mastered all 4 techniques. See him sitting on the ice, caribou hide layers loose and properly positioned, maintaining those critical air gaps, fingers making tiny subtle movements every few seconds, maintaining circulation, breathing slow and steady through his nose, capturing and conserving heat, body fueled by strategic fat and protein consumption from hours earlier, generating internal warmth. All 4 systems working together seamlessly. No conscious thought required. Muscle memory and deep knowledge turned into automatic responses. This is true mastery, when the techniques become part of you, as natural as breathing itself. And the result? Comforting conditions that would kill an unprepared person in 20 minutes. These 4 core techniques kept hunters alive in standard Arctic conditions. But the Inuit faced far more challenging scenarios than standard cold. Spring ice hunting required completely different approaches. Summer caribou migration meant adapting techniques for exertion cooling. Winter storm survival demanded emergency variations. The depth of this knowledge system becomes clear when you see the advanced applications master hunters developed. Techniques so sophisticated that survival instructors today consider them expert-level skills. Variations refined for specific conditions that demonstrate the full genius of traditional Arctic innovation. That's where we're going next, into the advanced applications that separate basic survival from true Arctic mastery. The 4 core techniques you just learned. That's just the foundation. Master hunters knew something most people never consider. The Arctic isn't one environment. It's dozens of different environments depending on season, location, and conditions. A technique that saves your life in February might kill you in May. What works in interior Canada fails completely in coastal Greenland. True mastery meant knowing when and how to adapt every technique to specific situations. This is where traditional knowledge becomes incredibly sophisticated, where thousands of years of refinement really shows. Let's explore the advanced variations that separate survival from mastery. Seasonal adaptations, spring ice hunting. Picture April in the Arctic. The sun returns after months of darkness, temperatures climb. Sounds like relief, right? Wrong. spring hunting brings completely different dangers. Watch a hunter preparing for spring seal hunting. He's not wearing the full layering system from winter. The temperatures have warmed to around 10 or 20 degrees, still freezing by normal standards, but in the Arctic, that's practically hot. The challenge shifts completely. Winter's enemy was heat loss. Spring's enemy is moisture. When you're active in warmer Arctic conditions, you sweat. Even a little sweat is catastrophic. That moisture wets your inner clothing layer. When temperatures drop in the evening, and they still drop hard, that wet clothing freezes against your skin. Now you've got ice inside your layers. Your insulation is destroyed. You're in serious danger. So spring hunters modified the core techniques dramatically. Layer modification becomes critical. Instead of the full double layer system, hunters switch to fewer layers with strategic venting. They wear clothing with openings that can be adjusted quickly. Arm vents, side vents, hood openings enlarged. The goal is dumping excess heat fast when exertion increases, then sealing up when resting. The hunter constantly adjusts. Moving across ice to a hunting spot, vents open, heat dumping. Sitting and waiting, vents partially closed, conserving warmth without overheating. Breathing techniques shift too. The air is more humid in spring, ice and snow are melting. That nasal breathing is still essential, but the rhythm changes. Slightly faster breathing rate because heat retention isn't as critical. The focus moves to moisture control, directing breath vapour away from clothing. Emergency heat dumping methods become essential skills. If you suddenly need to run, chasing wounded game, avoiding danger, your body generates massive heat fast. A spring hunter knows exactly how to shed that heat immediately. Outer layer comes off in seconds. Strategic venting opens fully. Breathing shifts to controlled mouth, breathing briefly to dump heat faster. One elder described spring hunting as dancing with the temperature. You're constantly moving between too hot and too cold, adjusting every few minutes, reading your body's signals, responding instantly. Now jump to fall, September and October. This might be the most challenging season of all. Temperature swings that would shock anyone who hasn't experienced them. A full day might start at 35 or 40 degrees, above freezing. By evening, -20. That's a 60-degree swing in 12 hours. Traditional hunters develop variable layering systems specifically for these conditions. Clothing that could be deployed or removed mid-hunt. Base layers that work across wide temperature ranges. Outer layers that pack small enough to carry when not needed. Watch a hunter during full caribou migration. Morning starts relatively warm. He's wearing minimal layers, just enough to stay comfortable while actively tracking. The caribou move, he follows. Hours pass. He's carrying his heavier layers in a pack. The sun starts dropping. Temperature plummets. Fast. In 30 minutes it drops 20 degrees. The hunter stops, pulls out his heavier layers, adds them quickly, adjusts everything and continues. No panic, just practiced efficiency. Metabolic timing shifts in fall too. The temperature swings demand different eating patterns. More frequent, smaller meals providing quick heat bursts rather than the long, slow burn needed in deep winter. And ice safety awareness becomes critical. Fall ice is forming but not fully solid. A hunter must constantly assess ice thickness while simultaneously managing body heat. One wrong step through thin ice in fall means wet clothing in rapidly dropping temperatures. That's often fatal without perfect execution of emergency techniques. Summer brings yet another reversal, the cooling challenge. June, July, August. Arctic temperatures might reach 40, 50, even 60 degrees during the day. Sounds pleasant until you're tracking caribou migration across tundra, moving fast, exerting heavily. Now the heat management techniques work in reverse. The challenge isn't staying warm, it's preventing dangerous overheating while knowing that night temperatures will still drop to freezing. Hunters developed sophisticated heat venting strategies. Strategic layer removal, but never removing everything because conditions change fast. Clothing with maximum ventilation options. Understanding exactly how to dump heat through breathing without losing too much hydration. Hydration becomes critical. The traditional winter approach of eating snow doesn't work in summer. You need liquid water, but you must balance hydration with the electrolyte loss from sweating. The real skill is rapid switching. You're hiking hard in 50-degree weather. Hot, venting heat. You stop to rest. Within minutes, wind chill makes 35 degrees feel cold. You need to shut down the venting, conserve heat, without overcompensating and starting to sweat again. Night hunting during summer caribou migration requires this constant adjustment. Temperatures at midnight might still be above freezing, but dawn brings fog, moisture and wind that cuts through like clothing. A hunter who mastered seasonal adaptation could switch between cooling and warming techniques effortlessly, reading conditions instinctively. Regional variations, different Arctic environments. The techniques you've learnt so far represent general Arctic knowledge, but the Inuit world spans thousands of miles across dramatically different environments. Each region developed specialised variations. Canadian Central Arctic, the extreme cold specialists. Interior regions west of Hudson Bay experience the most brutal cold on Earth. -60 is common, -70 happens, -80 has been recorded. The air is incredibly dry, wind is generally lower than coastal areas, but the cold is absolutely extreme. Hunters here specialised in maximum heat retention with minimal caloric expenditure. Their breathing heat recovery techniques were refined to an art form. That ultra-dry air meant every exhaled breath represented massive heat loss. The hood designs and breathing patterns developed here represent the pinnacle of heat conservation. Seal hunting in these regions meant extended immobility at temperatures that would kill most people in minutes. The circulation techniques, those tiny finger and toe movements, were refined to near invisibility. Any larger movements waste calories. Calories are precious when hunting success isn't guaranteed. Caribou hide processing in this region focused on maximum insulation. Thicker hides, more careful fur retention, layering systems with even more precise air gap maintenance. Greenlandic approach, wind management masters, now travel to Greenland's coast. The Kala-Alit people faced a completely different challenge. Temperatures might not drop quite as low as interior Canada, but the wind is relentless. 40, 50, 60 mile per hour winds regularly. 80 mile per hour gusts aren't rare. Wind destroys heat conservation. It compresses clothing layers, eliminating air gaps. It forces cold air through any opening. It creates wind chill that turns -20 into -60 instantly. Kala-Alit hunters developed specific adaptations. Sealskin outer layers in addition to or instead of caribou hide. Sealskin is more wind resistant, sheds moisture better in coastal conditions. The outer layer becomes true wind armour. Positioning techniques emphasised using terrain and ice formations as wind breaks. A hunter might position behind a pressure ridge, a wall of broken ice pushed up by ocean currents that blocks wind while maintaining sightlines to seal breathing holes. Dog team management added another dimension. Dog sleds were essential for covering the distances needed in Greenland hunting. The dogs themselves provided heat. Strategic positioning near but not too near dogs during rest periods. Using dog body heat as the supplement to personal heat management. And the Greenlandic coastal hunters dealt with ice conditions interior hunters never faced. Icebergs carving off glaciers, constantly shifting sea ice, risk of sudden immersion in ocean water. All their techniques had to account for potential cold water exposure. Alaskan Inupiat transition zone innovators. Northern Alaska presents yet another set of challenges. Coastal whaling, ocean spray coating everything with ice, volcanic regions in some areas providing geothermal features, and transition zones where Arctic meets subarctic environments. Storm entrapment, when you can't move and can't get home. Picture this scenario. A hunter is caught in a sudden Arctic storm. Visibility drops to 0 in blowing snow, temperature plummets, wind howls. Going forward is impossible. You'll get lost and die. The only option is survival in place until the storm passes. Watch the hunter's response. First, immediate shelter construction. Using a knife, he cuts blocks from wind-packed snow, stacking them in a specific pattern, creating a windbreak. Not a full igloo, no time, just enough shelter to block the killing wind. While building, he's managing body heat carefully. The exertion of cutting snow blocks generates warmth, but also risks sweating. Strategic venting keeps him from overheating. The work must be fast but controlled. Shelter complete. Now the real test begins. Hours of waiting, maybe overnight, maybe longer. Temperature may be -40 or 50. No fire, wind is too strong and fuel doesn't exist on sea ice anyway. The hunter reconfigures his entire heat management system for minimal caloric expenditure. Layers adjusted to maximum heat retention, but positioned to avoid any constriction that would reduce circulation. Body positioned to minimize heat loss surface area. Knees drawn up, arms close to body, but not so tight that circulation suffers. Breathing shifts to emergency conservation mode. 6 breaths per minute, maybe fewer. Deep, slow nasal breathing. This is the traditional waiting breathing state the elders taught. The metabolic rate drops. Modern researchers who studied this technique couldn't believe their measurements. 40% reduction in caloric expenditure. The body enters a state somewhere between normal alertness and hibernation. Conscious, aware, but burning minimal energy. Psychological management becomes critical too. Stress and fear increase metabolism. Waste calories generate heat loss through tension. Traditional hunters learned mental techniques to maintain calm. Not quite meditation, you must stay alert for changing conditions, but a state of relaxed awareness that minimizes energy waste. One documented case describes a hunter who survived 18 hours in a sudden storm using exactly these techniques. Found the next day by searchers, he was hypothermic but alive. No frostbite. He'd maintained the waiting breathing state through the entire night, conserving just enough warmth to survive until rescue. Equipment failure. When your clothing tears or gets lost. Imagine your outer layer rips, or gets blown away by wind, or soaked by unexpected water. Now you're facing extreme cold with compromised protection. Traditional knowledge included improvised repairs and substitutions. Emergency stitching using sinew always carried for exactly this purpose. Patches using pieces of hide from food animals hunted earlier. Quick field repairs that might not be perfect but restore enough function to survive. If the outer layer is completely lost, one layer survival becomes necessary. The hunter knows exactly how to maximize the remaining inner layer. Adjusting positioning to protect the most critical areas. Using any available materials, snow, vegetation in summer, even packed moss, as emergency supplemental insulation. In desperate situations, hunters could create emergency insulation from snow itself. Not a snow cave, that takes too long, but packed snow against areas where clothing is damaged or missing. The snow acts as temporary insulation. Not great, but better than nothing. Ice breakthrough, falling through into Arctic water. This is the nightmare scenario. One step, the ice breaks, you plunge into the water that's barely above freezing. You have maybe 1 to 3 minutes before muscle function fails, 5 to 10 minutes before loss of consciousness. Without perfect execution, you're dead. The counterintuitive traditional techniques saved lives. First seconds are critical. Don't try to climb straight up, you'll just break more ice. Traditional knowledge taught specific exit techniques. Spread your body horizontal. Kick hard to get horizontal in the water. Use the ice surface like a ramp, sliding forward while kicking. Get as much body onto solid ice as possible before trying to roll away from the breakthrough hole. You're out, soaking wet. Air temperature maybe -40 or -50. Now what? Modern instinct says strip off wet clothes immediately. Traditional knowledge says the opposite in specific situations. If you're more than a few minutes from shelter, keeping some wet clothing can actually be better. The layer of water against your skin is warmer than air at -40. The wet clothes block wind. Strip naked and you'll freeze faster. The technique: keep the wet inner layer against skin temporarily. Remove the outer layer. It's now heavy with water and useless. Use snow to rapidly absorb moisture from your hair and exposed skin. Pack snow between the wet inner layer and your body in critical areas. It sounds crazy, but the snow absorbs water, then can be shaken out, removing moisture from the clothing while your body heat starts drying. What remains? Move, generate heat. But controlled movement. Not panicked running that will exhaust you. Steady, purposeful motion generating just enough heat to start warming core temperature while you execute the moisture removal technique. Time-critical decisions. Do you try to reach distant shelter, or do you stop and build emergency shelter immediately? Do you remove clothing or keep it on? Traditional hunters made these decisions in seconds based on deep understanding of cold, moisture, distance, and their own physical condition. Search and rescue teams now study these traditional ice breakthrough recovery techniques. Modern survival instructors teach them in advanced certifications, because when modern equipment fails, and it does, traditional knowledge still works. These advanced techniques represent the pinnacle of 4,000 years of Arctic survival innovation. But here's what makes them truly remarkable. Modern scientists, military cold weather specialists, and professional survival instructors have now validated every single one of these methods in controlled laboratory settings and real-world conditions. The results shocked the research community and forced a complete rethinking of cold weather survival protocols. Let's look at the scientific proof and contemporary professional usage that confirms what Inuit peoples knew all along. For thousands of years, Inuit peoples knew their techniques worked. They didn't need proof. Survival was the proof. Stay warm, stay alive. Simple. But modern science needed to test everything. So researchers did, military programs did, universities did, and the results shocked everyone who thought modern technology had all the answers. Turns out our ancestors figured out cold weather survival better than billion-dollar research programs ever did. Let's look at who's using these techniques today and what the science actually proves. Military adoption. When elite forces learn from indigenous knowledge, the US Navy trains some of the world's toughest warriors. Navy SEALs, Arctic warfare specialists, people who operate in the most extreme conditions on Earth. And you know what they're learning now? Traditional Inuit techniques. Watch Navy Arctic warfare training in Alaska. You'll see something remarkable. Indigenous instructors, some of them Inuit, teaching elite military personnel how to breathe properly in extreme cold. How to maintain circulation without moving, obviously. How to layer clothing with specific air gaps. This isn't Cultural Appreciation Hour, this is mandatory tactical training. Because commanders realised something. Modern cold weather gear was failing and soldiers were getting injured. Frostbite, hypothermia, reduced effectiveness in Arctic operations. Then they started integrating traditional Inuit principles into training. The results? Cold weather injury rates dropped dramatically. Soldiers could operate longer in extreme conditions. Effectiveness improved across the board. One Arctic warfare instructor put it bluntly, "We spent decades and millions of dollars developing cold weather systems. Then we learned indigenous peoples had already solved these problems better than we ever did. Now we teach their methods first, modern gear second." The Canadian Rangers program takes this even further. 5,000 Rangers operate across Canada's Arctic and northern regions. Many of them are Indigenous, Inuit, First Nations, Métis. They patrol the most remote, harshest territory in North America, and they do it using traditional knowledge combined with modern tools. The Canadian government officially recognises that traditional Inuit knowledge is superior for Arctic operations, not just equal, superior. Rangers teach soldiers traditional techniques. They advise on equipment modifications. They share knowledge that's kept people alive for millennia. Equipment designs have changed based on Ranger input. Modern military clothing now incorporates air gap principles derived from traditional layering. Breathing protocols for extreme cold operations come directly from traditional practices. Even nutrition timing for cold weather missions reflects traditional metabolic heat management. This is the Canadian military, a modern, technologically advanced force, officially adopting Indigenous knowledge as primary Arctic survival doctrine. Polar expedition leaders learned similar lessons, often the hard way. Eric Larson, a renowned polar explorer, has reached both poles multiple times. He's crossed Antarctica and the Arctic Ocean. The guy knows extreme cold, and he credits traditional Inuit techniques for his survival and success. In interviews, Larson describes how he studied traditional methods before his expeditions, how he incorporated breathing techniques, circulation methods, and layering principles into his own practice, how those techniques saved him when modern equipment failed. Other expedition leaders tell similar stories. Historical comparisons are striking. Early polar expeditions in the 1800s and early 1900s, led by Europeans using European methods, had terrible success rates. Many ended in disaster. People froze to death despite advanced gear. Modern expeditions that incorporate traditional knowledge, much higher success rates, fewer cold weather injuries, better performance in extreme conditions. Expedition outfitters now teach Inuit techniques as standard preparation. You want to attempt a polar crossing? You're learning nasal breathing protocols and circulation maintenance before you go. Not optional. Required. Survival schools have undergone a similar transformation. Advanced Wilderness Survival Certification now includes traditional Arctic techniques. Schools like the National Outdoor Leadership School, NOLS, integrate Indigenous knowledge into their cold weather curriculum, not as cultural add-ons, as core survival skills. Professional outdoor guides in northern regions often require certification in traditional cold weather methods. You can't guide in the Arctic without understanding the techniques Indigenous peoples developed. Survival instructors who've tested these methods themselves become the strongest advocates. One instructor described testing traditional breathing techniques. "I thought it was just cultural knowledge, interesting, but maybe not practical. Then I tested it myself in -30 degrees. The difference was immediate and dramatic. Now it's the first thing I teach." Scientific validation. When researchers prove what indigenous peoples already knew, scientists love to test things. So they tested traditional Inuit techniques in laboratories, in controlled conditions, with precise measurements. The results kept surprising them. University researchers studying traditional caribou hide clothing couldn't believe their thermal imaging results. They compared traditional layered caribou hide systems against modern synthetic insulation, the expensive high-tech stuff outdoor companies charge hundreds of dollars for. They tested both at 40 degrees below zero, then 60 below. Traditional caribou hide layering outperformed modern synthetic significantly. Not a little better, dramatically better. At extreme temperatures, the difference was even more pronounced. The thermal imaging showed something else remarkable. Modern synthetic layers accumulated internal condensation, moisture building up inside the insulation. That moisture reduces effectiveness and can freeze. The traditional caribou layering? Zero internal condensation. Moisture escaped between layers without compromising insulation. Heat distribution measurements showed traditional methods maintained core body temperature better than modern approaches. Test subjects wearing traditional layering systems stayed warmer with less caloric expenditure. When researchers first saw these results, some thought their equipment malfunctioned. How could simple animal hide outperform space-age materials? They ran the tests again. Same results. Traditional methods won every comparison. Metabolic research provided more validation. Scientists at cold weather research facilities tested the breathing techniques. They measured respiratory heat loss with nasal breathing versus mouth breathing. Nasal breathing reduced heat loss significantly. The test subjects retained substantially more warmth without any additional effort. The circulation methods, those tiny finger and toe movements, showed measurable benefits. Test subjects using the traditional circulation techniques maintained finger temperature and dexterity far longer than control groups. In -30 degree conditions, the difference was striking. Traditional technique users could still manipulate small objects when control subjects had lost fine motor control. Metabolic food timing research confirmed traditional knowledge about strategic fat and protein consumption. Test subjects following traditional eating patterns before cold exposure maintained comfortable warmth far longer than those eating the same calories randomly. The timing mattered enormously. When researchers combined all the techniques, layering, breathing, circulation, metabolic timing, test subjects showed remarkable cold tolerance improvements, people comfortable for hours in conditions where control subjects became dangerously cold in a fraction of that time. One study measured the waiting breathing state that traditional hunters used. Subjects trained in the technique showed metabolic rate reductions approaching 40% without loss of alertness. Researchers couldn't explain how conscious humans could achieve such dramatic metabolic reduction until they studied the technique in detail. Materials scientists got involved too. Researchers at major universities analysed caribou hair structure at microscopic and even nanoscale levels. They discovered that the hollow hair structure creates incredibly efficient insulation at multiple scales. Each hair acts as a tiny insulation tube. The structure provides benefits that synthetic materials struggle to replicate. Weight-for-weight comparisons showed traditional materials far more effective than modern equivalents. Flexibility testing revealed that caribou hide maintains insulation properties even when compressed, something most synthetic materials can't do. Synthetic insulation loses 60% or more of its effectiveness when compressed. Caribou hide stays effective. Durability studies found that properly prepared caribou hide maintained effectiveness for 10 plus years. Many modern synthetic materials degrade significantly faster. Physiological research examined how these techniques affect human bodies in cold. Studies published in respected journals documented extremity circulation technique effectiveness. Traditional methods maintained finger dexterity hundreds of percentage points longer than unassisted cold exposure. Comprehensive studies applying all traditional techniques together showed test subjects comfortable for more than double the time control subjects could tolerate similar conditions. Comparative effectiveness analyses revealed even broader advantages. Cost comparison. Learning traditional techniques costs a fraction of equivalent modern gear. Complete set of high-end cold weather clothing can cost thousands of dollars. Learning the techniques, essentially free with far better results. Adaptability. Traditional methods work effectively across temperature ranges, spanning well over 100 degrees Fahrenheit. Modern gear is typically optimized for narrow temperature ranges. Failure resilience. Traditional techniques remain functional even with damaged or lost equipment. Modern gear systems often fail completely if one component is lost or breaks. Sustainability. Traditional approaches require no external supply chain, no manufacturing infrastructure, no resource extraction. Modern gear requires all of these. The Arctic Institute, a research organisation focused on Arctic issues, summarised it perfectly. Traditional Inuit cold weather knowledge represents one of humanity's most sophisticated survival adaptations, validated by both millennia of successful use and modern scientific analysis. Why this matters today. Modern outdoor equipment manufacturers now consult with Inuit knowledge keepers. They're trying to understand principles that can improve commercial products. Some manufacturers have hired indigenous advisors specifically to incorporate traditional knowledge into designs. University programs are developing curriculum around indigenous cold weather knowledge, not just anthropology departments studying it as cultural history, engineering departments learning from it, medical schools examining the physiological mechanisms, climate science programs documenting traditional ecological knowledge. Emergency services have started adopting traditional techniques for rescue operations. Search and rescue teams train in traditional ice breakthrough recovery methods. Wilderness rescue protocols now include traditional circulation and breathing techniques for cold exposure victims. Climate researchers recognise that traditional knowledge provides invaluable insights for understanding Arctic changes and developing adaptation strategies. As the Arctic warms and changes, that traditional knowledge becomes even more valuable for understanding what's happening and how to respond. Here's the bottom line. Science confirmed what Indigenous peoples knew all along. Traditional Inuit body heat techniques aren't just culturally interesting. They're not quaint historical practices. They are sophisticated, highly effective, scientifically validated survival methods that outperform modern technology in multiple critical ways. The scientific proof is overwhelming. Traditional Inuit body heat techniques outperform modern technology in nearly every measurable way. But understanding the science doesn't help unless you can actually apply these methods in real-world conditions. Whether you're planning a winter camping trip, preparing for emergency preparedness, or just want to reduce your heating bills, these ancestral techniques are practical, testable, and surprisingly easy to begin implementing. Here's your complete guide to getting started today. You've learnt the history, you've seen the science, you understand the techniques. Now comes the most important question. How do you actually start using this knowledge yourself? Here's the truth. You're not going to master 4,000-year-old Arctic survival techniques in a weekend, but you can start learning today, right now, and within weeks, you'll notice real differences in how your body handles cold. This section is your roadmap from complete beginner to competent practitioner. We'll go step by step, safe and smart, building skills progressively. Let's get started. Beginner. Level. Building your foundation. At home. The best part about these techniques, you can start practicing immediately in your own home. No special equipment, no extreme conditions, just you learning the basics in complete safety. Week 1 to 2. Master the breathing technique. This is your starting point. The breathing technique is the easiest to learn and gives the fastest results. Here's exactly what to do. Find a comfortable spot in your home. Room temperature around 60 to 65 degrees, normal indoor temperature. Sit comfortably. Now focus on your breathing. Breathe only through your nose, in through your nose, out through your nose. Mouth stays closed. Make each breath slow and deep. Count in your head. Breathe in for 4 seconds, breathe out for 6 seconds. That gives you about 8 breaths per minute, exactly what traditional hunters used. Do this for 10 minutes, just 10 minutes, every single day for 2 weeks. What should you feel? Within 5 minutes, your face should feel warmer. Your whole head might feel slightly warmer. That's the heat recovery working. You're keeping warmth that would normally escape. Here's the most common mistake people make. Breathing too fast. If you're breathing 12 or 15 times per minute, you're defeating the purpose. Slow down. 8 to 10 breaths maximum. Use a timer on your phone, count your breaths, make sure you're actually doing it slow enough. Want to test if it's working? Try this. Stand in front of your bathroom mirror. Breathe normally through your mouth for 30 seconds. Watch the fog on the mirror, lots of vapour. Now breathe through your nose using the slow technique. Much less vapour. That's proof you're retaining more heat. Once you're comfortable at room temperature, test it somewhere colder. Open your refrigerator. Stick your head near the cold air for 1 minute. Practice the nasal breathing technique. Notice how the cold air doesn't shock your system as much. Your nose is warming the air before it reaches your lungs. Week 3 to 4. Add circulation training. Now you're breathing properly. Time to add the circulation technique. This one you can practice anywhere. Sitting at your desk, watching TV, riding in a car anytime, anywhere. Start with your fingers. Make a gentle fist, not tight, just a light curl of your fingers. Hold it for 3 seconds. 1, 2, 3. Now release for 2 seconds. Completely relax your hand, then repeat. Curl for 3, relax for 2, over and over. Do this for 5 minutes every hour during your normal day. Set phone reminders if you need to. 5 minutes isn't much, but consistency matters more than duration. The movements should be nearly invisible to anyone watching. You're not doing obvious exercises, just subtle, small movements. That's the whole point, maintaining circulation without burning calories or generating sweat. After 2 weeks of finger practice, add your toes. Same pattern. Curl your toes gently inside your shoes. 3 seconds curl, 2 seconds release. Again, barely visible to anyone else. Now test it in cold. Fill a bowl with ice water. Dip your hands in for 30 seconds with no technique, just sitting there. Notice when they start feeling numb and cold. Take them out, warm them up completely. Now try again with the circulation technique. Hands in ice water, but this time do the subtle finger movements. 3 seconds curl, 2 seconds release. Most people can keep their hands in 2 to 3 times longer before discomfort hits. That's the technique working. Week 3 to 4. Understanding layering with what you already own. You don't need caribou hide to learn layering principles. You probably own clothing right now that can teach you the basics. Go to your closet, find loose-fitting clothes, a loose wool or cotton long-sleeve shirt, a loose fleece jacket or sweater, a windproof outer jacket. These will work for learning. Put on the base layer loose, not tight. You should be able to slide a hand between the fabric and your skin easily. That's your air gap. Now add the middle layer, also loose, air gap between the 2 layers, finally the outer layer. Go outside on a cool day, maybe 40 or 50 degrees. Walk around for 30 minutes. Notice how warm you stay even though the clothes feel loose and almost baggy. Now try it differently. Take the same clothes and wear them tight against your body. Layer them wholly. To add snug, go outside again. You'll get colder faster. The tight layers compress everything, eliminate air gaps, destroy the insulation effect. This simple test teaches you the single most important layering principle. Loose beats tight every time. Want to practice on a budget? Hit thrift stores. Look for oversized wool sweaters, loose fleece jackets. You can build an experimental layering system for $50 or less. You're learning, not gearing up for an expedition. Cheap practice clothes work fine. Intermediate level. Taking it outdoors. After 4 to 8 weeks of home practice, you're ready for actual cold exposure. But we're going to be smart and safe about this. Month 2 to 3, controlled outdoor practice, start easy. 30 to 40 degrees Fahrenheit, low wind, 30-minute sessions maximum. Critical safety rule, never practice alone, always have a partner, and always have warm shelter within 5 minutes. A heated car, a building, somewhere you can get warm immediately if something goes wrong. Tell someone your plan. I'm practicing cold exposure techniques from 2 to 2:30. I'll check in at 2:35. If you don't hear from me, call, start your session. You're wearing your layering system. You're breathing through your nose. You're doing the subtle circulation movements. Now you're combining all 3 techniques simultaneously. This is where it gets real. This is where intellectual knowledge becomes physical skill. Pay attention to your home body. Are you staying comfortable? Are your fingers and toes warm? Is your breathing keeping your core warm? Good. You're doing it right. Feeling uncomfortably cold? That's your signal. Session over, get to shelter, warm up, figure out what went wrong. Maybe your layers were too tight. Maybe you weren't doing the circulation movements frequently enough. Maybe you're not ready for that temperature yet. Progress gradually. Once 30 minutes at 40 degrees feels comfortable, try 35 degrees, then 30, then increase duration, 45 minutes, an hour, always with your safety protocols in place. Modern material alternatives. Most people aren't going to get caribou hide. That's fine. Modern alternatives exist. Best natural alternatives: sheepskin, alpaca wool, quality merino wool. These materials have similar properties to caribou: natural fibres, good insulation, moisture management. Synthetic alternatives: quality fleece for mid-layers, windproof shells for outer layers. They won't perform quite as well as natural materials, but they work well enough for learning. Budget option for $50 to $150. Thrift store wool sweater for base layer. Discount fleece jacket for mid-layer. Basic windproof jacket for outer. This gets you practicing. Premium option if you want to invest. Custom-made wool or alpaca garments designed with proper air gaps. Some specialty companies make these. Expect to spend $300 to $500. Ethical traditional materials. If you want actual caribou hide or seal skin, you must source it ethically and legally. Some indigenous artisans sell traditionally prepared materials. Buy from them directly. Expect to pay premium prices. And understand that you're not just buying materials, you're supporting indigenous craftspeople and traditional knowledge preservation. Metabolic heat management with modern foods. You're not eating seal blubber, but you can apply the same principles with modern foods. Before cold exposure, eat high-fat foods 1 to 2 hours prior. Good options: handful of nuts, nut butter, cheese, fatty fish like salmon, avocado, olive oil. These provide the slow-burning fuel that generates sustained internal heat. During longer cold exposure, 2+ hours, have protein-rich snacks available. Jerky, hard-boiled eggs, protein bars. Digestion creates that pulse of warmth when you need it. Always carry emergency food. Even if you don't plan to be out long, bring calorie-dense snacks. If something goes wrong and you're out longer than expected, that food could save you. Hydration matters too. Cold makes you forget to drink, but dehydration reduces cold tolerance significantly. Drink before you go out. Bring water with you. If it's cold enough that water freezes, keep the bottle inside your jacket where body heat keeps it liquid. Real-world applications. These techniques aren't just for wilderness survival. You can use them every day. Winter commuting, walking to the bus or train. Use the breathing and circulation techniques. You'll stay warmer without bulking up in heavy coats. Outdoor recreation. Hiking, skiing, snowshoeing. The techniques make you more comfortable and safer. You're less dependent on gear, more adaptable to changing conditions. Emergency preparedness. Car breaks down in winter. These techniques could save your life while waiting for help. Urban heat management. Reduce your home heating. Use body heat management to stay comfortable at lower thermostat settings. Lower heating bills, smaller carbon footprint. People are using these techniques for everything from ice fishing to winter camping to just enjoying winter more comfortably. Advanced level. Moving toward Mumfordso said mastery. After several months of consistent practice, you're ready for genuine challenges. Month 4 and beyond, extended cold exposure. Now we're talking 0 to 20 degrees Fahrenheit. Moderate wind, 2 to 4 hour sessions. This is real cold weather training. You're incorporating not just the basic techniques, but the seasonal adaptations and regional variations you learned earlier. You're learning when to vent heat, when to conserve it, how to adjust for wind, how to manage moisture risk. Safety protocols remain critical. Partner system, communication plan, emergency shelter access. But now you're pushing boundaries under controlled conditions. Practice emergency scenarios. What if your outer layer ripped? Simulate it. How would you adapt? What if you got wetter than expected? What if conditions change suddenly? Controlled practice of these scenarios builds real competence. Finding mentors and community reading and practicing alone only gets you so far. Eventually, you need guidance from experienced practitioners. Look for Indigenous-led training programs. Some Inuit cultural centres offer workshops. Some wilderness schools partner with Indigenous instructors. These programs offer authentic learning and support traditional knowledge holders financially. Survival schools with strong cold weather programs can provide advanced certification. Look for schools that explicitly credit Indigenous knowledge sources and teach respectfully. Online communities exist where people practicing these techniques share experiences. Join them, ask questions, share what you're learning. Learn from others' mistakes and successes. The goal isn't just personal skill development, it's becoming part of a community that values and preserves this knowledge. Safety protocols and troubleshooting. Let's address common problems and critical safety rules. Absolute safety requirements. Never practice in genuine cold alone, ever. No exceptions. Always have warm shelter within 5 minutes initially. As you gain experience, you can increase that distance, but start conservative. Learn frostbite warning signs before attempting any cold exposure. Numbness, tingling, white or pale skin, reduced sensation. These require immediate warming. If you have circulatory problems, Raynaud's phenomenon, diabetes, or respiratory conditions, get medical clearance before cold training. Always carry a charged phone. Always tell someone your plan and check-in time. Common problems and solutions. Problem. I'm not feeling any benefit from the breathing technique. Solution. You're probably breathing too fast. Count your breaths. Verify you're actually at 8 per minute or slower. Also make sure you're truly breathing through your nose, mouth completely closed, and give it time. 10 minutes minimum per session. Problem. The circulation movements make my hands tired. Solution. You're working too hard. The movements should be nearly imperceptible. Barely any muscle tension. If you're getting fatigued, you're doing it wrong. Reduce the intensity dramatically. Problem. My layering system makes me too hot when I'm active. Solution. You need to learn strategic venting. Open the front of your jacket while moving. Vent at wrists and neck. Or reduce the number of layers for active periods. The system is meant to be adjusted constantly, not worn the same way all day. Problem. I can't maintain the techniques when I'm distracted or focused on other things. Solution. This is normal. The techniques require practice until they become automatic. Expect 40 plus hours of conscious practice before they become muscle memory. Start by practicing one technique at a time until it's automatic, then add the next. Legal and ethical considerations. Public land. If you're practicing cold weather camping, check permit requirements. Many public lands require permits for winter camping. Traditional materials. Caribou hide, seal skin and other traditional materials may be subject to wildlife regulations. Never buy materials of questionable origin, only purchase from verified legal and ethical sources, preferably Indigenous artisans. Cultural respect. Using these techniques for personal benefit is respectful appreciation. Teaching them commercially without proper training and community relationships is exploitation. If you want to teach these techniques professionally, seek formal training and ideally, partnership with or permission from Indigenous knowledge holders. Always credit Inuit origins when sharing. Don't present these as survival hacks you discovered. They are traditional Inuit knowledge. Say so explicitly. As you begin your journey learning these remarkable techniques, it's essential to remember where this knowledge comes from and why preserving it matters more now than ever. The Inuit peoples didn't just develop survival techniques. They created a complete knowledge system spanning thousands of years, refined by countless generations, and representing irreplaceable human wisdom. This knowledge is under threat in our modern world. And how we approach learning and sharing these techniques will determine whether this ancestral wisdom survives for future generations. That's what we're exploring next. Why cultural preservation matters and how you can support it. You've learned techniques that can keep you alive in extreme cold. Knowledge that outperforms modern technology. Wisdom proven over 4,000 years. But here's what you must understand. This knowledge doesn't belong to you. It doesn't belong to me. It belongs to the Inuit peoples who created it, refined it, preserved it across millennia. And that knowledge is under threat. How we learn these techniques, how we share them, and whether we support the communities who created them, these choices matter enormously, not just for us, for the future of irreplaceable human wisdom. Let's talk about respect, preservation, and what you can do to help, giving credit where it's due. Every time you use these techniques, remember where they came from. These are Inuit innovations, created by specific peoples in specific places over thousands of years. When you talk about what you've learned, say it clearly. These are traditional Inuit cold weather survival techniques, not ancient survival tricks, not life hacks our ancestors knew. Be specific. Give proper credit. Regional specificity matters too. The Inuvialuit of Canada's Western Arctic developed certain adaptations. The Kalaallit of Greenland created others. The Inupiat of Alaska innovated specific approaches. When you know the regional origin of a particular technique, mention it. Honour the specific communities behind the knowledge. If you learned from a particular elder or knowledge keeper, credit them by name when appropriate. These individuals spent lifetimes mastering and preserving this knowledge. They deserve recognition. Use present tense when talking about Inuit culture. These aren't ancient practices from a vanished people. Inuit communities exist right now, today, continuing these traditions. Say, Inuit peoples use these techniques, not Inuit peoples used to use these techniques. Language matters. It shapes how people think about living cultures versus historical curiosities. Understanding appreciation versus appropriation. There's a difference between learning respectfully and stealing culture. Appreciation looks like this: learning these techniques for your own survival, outdoor recreation, or emergency preparedness. Crediting Inuit origins. Every time you share the knowledge. Supporting Inuit communities through donations, purchases, or advocacy. Respecting that some knowledge is protected and not yours to share. Appropriation looks like this: claiming expertise you don't have, teaching these techniques commercially without proper training or community relationships, presenting the knowledge as your own discovery, ignoring or minimizing indigenous origins, profiting without giving back to the communities who created the knowledge. Personal use is encouraged. Learning for yourself, teaching your family, using the techniques to stay safe. This is respectful appreciation. The knowledge keepers who taught these techniques often explicitly wanted them shared for survival purposes, but commercial use requires caution. If you want to teach these techniques professionally in survival schools through paid courses as part of your business, you need more than just knowledge. You need proper training, ideally from Indigenous instructors. You need community relationships, and you should find ways to benefit share with the communities whose knowledge you're teaching. Some traditional knowledge is protected. Certain practices are sacred. Certain information is meant to stay within specific families or communities. If you encounter knowledge that seems protected or sacred, respect those boundaries. Not everything is meant to be shared publicly. The threats facing traditional knowledge. This knowledge survived 4,000 years, but right now it faces unprecedented threats. Climate change is hitting the Arctic harder than anywhere else on Earth. Temperatures rising 2 to 3 times faster than the global average. Sea ice forming later, melting earlier. Animal migration patterns changing, traditional hunting grounds becoming inaccessible. These changes don't just threaten Inuit livelihoods, they threaten knowledge transmission itself. How do you teach ice safety techniques when the ice doesn't form like it used to? How do you pass down seasonal hunting knowledge when the seasons are shifting unpredictably? Traditional knowledge is tied to the environment. When the environment changes rapidly, some knowledge becomes harder to practice, harder to teach, at risk of being lost. There's a painful paradox here. Arctic warming threatens the traditional practices that embody incredible environmental wisdom. At the same time, that traditional wisdom is exactly what humanity needs for climate adaptation and sustainability. We're risking losing the knowledge when we need it most. Modernization creates different pressures. Younger generations face choices their grandparents never imagined. Jobs require moving to towns. Education happens in classrooms, not on the land. Modern conveniences reduce the necessity of traditional skills. Western lifestyles become more common. This isn't about judging anyone's choices. Inuit peoples have every right to modern education, jobs, technology, and contemporary life. But there's real tension between traditional knowledge transmission, which requires time on the land, close mentorship, seasonal practice, and modern economic and social realities. Language loss compounds the problem. Inuktitut, the Inuit language, is declining in many regions. UNESCO classifies it as vulnerable to endangered depending on location. And so much traditional knowledge is embedded in language. Specific terms describing ice conditions, weather patterns, animal behaviour. Oral traditions passed down in Inuktitut. When language declines, knowledge transmission gets harder. Historical trauma left deep scars. Canadian government policies forcibly removed Indigenous children to residential schools, banned traditional practices, punished children for speaking Inuktitut, attempted to erase Indigenous cultures entirely. The last residential school closed in 1996, that's recent. The trauma is ongoing, and one legacy is disrupted knowledge transmission. Generations of children who couldn't learn from their elders who couldn't teach their grandchildren. Those broken connections still affect communities today. Economic factors add pressure too. Traditional knowledge transmission takes time, lots of time, learning by doing over years through many seasons. But modern economic realities often don't allow that time. People need jobs, bills need paying, time on the land competing with economic necessity, preservation efforts, hope and action. Despite these challenges, Inuit communities and organisations are fighting hard to preserve traditional knowledge. The Inuit Circumpolar Council represents Inuit peoples across 4 countries: Alaska, Canada, Greenland, and Russia. They work internationally to protect Inuit rights, culture and traditional knowledge. They advocate for climate action. They push for recognition of Inuit intellectual property. They're on the front lines of preservation. Inuit Tapiriit Kanatami, ITK, leads nationally in Canada. They coordinate across Canadian Inuit regions on culture, health, environment and rights. They run programs specifically focused on traditional knowledge preservation and transmission. Nunavut Arctic College offers something remarkable: programs that integrate traditional knowledge with modern education. Students can learn both Western science and traditional hunting techniques. Academic study and land-based learning. This bridges worlds and gives younger generations pathways to maintain traditional knowledge while gaining modern qualifications. Elder youth programs pair knowledge keepers with young people. Direct transmission. One-on-one or small group mentorship. Time on the land, seasonal learning. These programs recreate the traditional transmission methods that worked for millennia. Community-controlled digital archives are documenting traditional knowledge. Videos of elders demonstrating techniques. Audio recordings of oral histories. Written documentation in both Inuktitut and English. Crucially, communities control these archives. They decide what gets shared, what stays protected, who has access. Technology serving cultural preservation on Indigenous terms. UNESCO recognition provides international protection for Indigenous knowledge systems. Various frameworks now acknowledge Indigenous intellectual property rights. These aren't perfect, but they're progress toward protecting traditional knowledge legally and internationally. Some programs are seeing real success. Young people reconnecting with traditional practices, communities maintaining cultural vitality, languages being revitalized in some regions. The fight isn't lost. Preservation is happening. How you can help. You've learned this knowledge. Now you can support the people who preserved it. Learn from Indigenous instructors when possible. Prioritize programs taught by Inuit people. Some community cultural centres offer workshops. Some wilderness schools partner with Indigenous instructors. Seek these out. Your tuition supports Indigenous knowledge keepers directly. Read Inuit authors. Books by Inuit writers about traditional knowledge, culture, contemporary life. Engage with Inuit perspectives directly, not just outsider interpretations. Buy these books, support Inuit creators. Financial support matters. Organisations like ITK, ICC, and specific community cultural centres accept donations. Your money supports preservation programs, elder youth initiatives, language revitalisation, cultural events. Even small donations help. Buy directly from Inuit artists and craftspeople. Traditional artwork, clothing, crafts. These purchases support individuals maintaining traditional skills. Look for genuine Inuit-made products. Avoid cheap imitations. Amplify Indigenous voices. When Inuit creators, educators or activists share content online, amplify it, share it, comment, engage, help their voices reach wider audiences, support Indigenous rights broadly, land protection, self-determination, climate justice. These fights are connected to cultural preservation. You can't separate traditional knowledge from the land it comes from, or the rights of peoples who created it. Approach learning with humility. Recognize that watching videos and practicing techniques doesn't make you an expert in Inuit culture. True mastery required lifetimes of immersion. You're learning specific skills, but there's vast cultural context, worldview, and knowledge you're not accessing. Respect that depth. Continuing your learning journey means engaging with contemporary Inuit perspectives. Not just historical accounts, not just ancient wisdom, current Inuit voices talking about their culture, their challenges, their futures. Follow Inuit activists on social media. Watch documentaries featuring Inuit communities. Engage with the living culture, not just historical artifacts. This is the beginning of learning, not the end. View it as an ongoing journey. Stay curious, stay respectful, keep learning. Organisations to support Inuit e Tapariet. Kanatami, ITK, National Inuit Organisation in Canada. Inuit Circumpolar Council, International Indigenous Arctic Peoples Organisation. Nunavut Tungavik Incorporated, Inuit Land Claims and Cultural Preservation. Regional Inuit organisations, specific to territories across the Arctic. Local cultural centres. Community-run programs in Inuit communities. The bottom line. This knowledge survived 4,000 years because Inuit peoples fought to preserve it. Generation after generation choosing to teach their children. Elders spending time ensuring knowledge passed forward. Communities valuing traditional wisdom even as the world changed around them. Now that survival continues, but it needs support, your respect, your credit, your advocacy, your financial contribution, your commitment to learning responsibly. You've learned techniques that could save your life. Honour that gift by supporting the peoples who created it. Now that you understand both the techniques themselves and the cultural context that makes them possible, you're ready to take the next steps. Whether you want to begin personal practice, support preservation efforts, or simply appreciate the remarkable innovation of Inuit peoples, there are concrete actions you can take today. This ancestral wisdom has survived for 4,000 years, and what you do next can help ensure it thrives for 4,000 more. Here's how to start your journey. You've journeyed 4,000 years back in time. You've learned techniques that outperform modern technology. You've discovered wisdom that can literally save your life. Now comes the most important question. What will you do with this knowledge? Here's your action plan, step by step, starting right now. Start tonight. Things you can do in the next 10 minutes. Action 1. Practice the breathing technique. Right now, wherever you are, you can begin. Sit comfortably. Close your mouth, breathe only through your nose, slow and deep, and in for 4 seconds, out for 6 seconds, about 8 breaths per minute. Do this for 10 minutes. Feel your face warming up, that's the technique working, that's 4,000 years of Inuit innovation happening in your body right now. Set a reminder on your phone. Practice this 3 times every day for 1 week. Morning, afternoon, evening. 10 minutes each time. By the end of the week, it'll feel natural. You'll understand exactly how powerful this simple technique really is. Action 2. Check your winter clothing. Go to your closet right now, pull out your winter clothes, try them on loose instead of tight. Feel the difference? That air gap is insulation. You probably already own clothes that can teach you the layering principle. You don't need special gear to start learning. Action 3. Test the circulation technique. Sitting right there, curl your fingers gently. 3 seconds hold, 2 seconds release. Do it for 1 minute. Feel the warmth building in your hands. You just learnt the basics of a technique that's kept Inuit hunters warm for thousands of years. This week, take it further. Nindad to source materials for real practice. You don't need caribou hide, hit a thrift store. Find loose wool sweaters, oversized fleece, windproof jackets. Build an experimental layering system for $50. You're not gearing up for an Arctic expedition, you're learning. Cheap practice materials work perfectly. Schedule your first cold exposure session. Find a partner. Pick a day this week when temperature will be 35 to 40 degrees. Low wind, plan 30 minutes outside, warm shelter within 5 minutes. This is controlled practice. Safe, smart, progressive. Plan your nutrition strategy. Before that cold exposure session, eat strategic fats. Handful of nuts an hour before, cheese, avocado, whatever high-fat food you like. Test the metabolic heat principle for yourself. Research Indigenous-led training. Look for Inuit cultural centres in northern regions. Wilderness schools that partner with Indigenous instructors. Indigenous-led programs teaching traditional knowledge. If you're serious about deep learning, this is the path. Your tuition supports the communities who preserve this knowledge. Read an Inuit author, not a book about Inuit peoples, a book by Inuit authors, their perspectives, their voices, their stories, and support Indigenous creators. Learn from primary sources. This month, commit to mastery. Enroll in a survival course that teaches traditional cold weather techniques. Look for programs that explicitly credit Indigenous knowledge. Instructors who've learned from Indigenous teachers. Quality training costs money, but it's worth it. Plan a winter outdoor activity. Camping trip, winter hike, snowshoeing adventure. Something that lets you practice all 4 techniques together in real conditions. Supervised, safe but real, support of preservation financially, donate to organisations preserving Inuit traditional knowledge, even small amounts help. Inuit Tapiriit Kanatami, Inuit Circumpolar Council, regional cultural centres. Put your money where your learning is. Practice until it's automatic. These techniques need to become muscle memory. 40 plus hours of conscious practice. That's when breathing through your nose, moving your fingers subtly, maintaining your layers, all of it becomes as natural as walking. That's when you've truly learned. Share responsibly. When you tell friends and family what you've learned, credit Inuit origins explicitly. Every single time. Show them this video. Explain where the knowledge comes from. Help spread awareness while maintaining respect. Where you'll use these techniques. These aren't just wilderness survival skills. They're life skills applicable everywhere. Outdoor recreation, hiking, camping, skiing, snowshoeing. You'll enjoy winter more, stay comfortable longer, need less gear, feel more capable and confident in cold conditions. Emergency preparedness. Car breaks down in winter, power outage during a storm. These techniques could save your life while you wait for help. They're resilience tools for uncertain times. Athletic performance, winter sports, cold weather training, endurance events, traditional methods enhance performance, less gear dependency, better cold tolerance, more efficient energy use, economic benefits, reduce your heating costs, lower your thermostat, use body heat management to stay comfortable, less money on expensive winter gear, more sustainable warmth generation, daily life, winter commuting becomes easier, outdoor work more tolerable, cold weather comfort without bundling up in restrictive layers. These techniques make winter livable, even enjoyable. Climate adaptation. As climate becomes more unpredictable, as infrastructure becomes less reliable, traditional resilience knowledge becomes essential. These techniques prepare you for uncertain futures. Cultural connection. Learning and practicing these techniques connects you meaningfully to Indigenous knowledge, supporting preservation, being part of keeping this wisdom alive. Join the community. You're not learning alone. Thousands of people are discovering the power of ancestral wisdom. Subscribe to Heritage Hacks. More episodes coming. Traditional innovations from cultures worldwide. Mongolian horsemanship endurance secrets. Aboriginal fire starting techniques. Viking navigation methods. Ancient solutions to modern problems. Every episode. Comment below. Which technique will you try first? What surprised you most? Share your experiences, ask questions, support each other. This community is your resource for ongoing learning. Share this video. Help preserve this knowledge by spreading awareness. Every share reaches someone who might need these skills, someone who'll support preservation efforts, someone who'll carry this wisdom forward. Stay connected. The Community tab has ongoing discussions, tips from practitioners, updates on Indigenous-led programs, resources for deeper learning. You're part of something bigger now. Remember what you've learned. 4 techniques, each one proven over millennia, each one backed by science, each one yours to use. The multi-layer air trapping system. Loose layers creating insulation gaps, static air holding warmth, simple principle, remarkable effectiveness, the extremity circulation method. Tiny movements maintaining blood flow. No wasted energy, no dangerous cold settling into fingers and toes. The breathing heat recovery system. Nasal breathing capturing warmth. Every exhale recapturing heat. Core temperature maintained through breathing alone. The metabolic fire maintenance. Strategic nutrition generating internal heat. Fat and protein timing creating sustained warmth from inside. 4 techniques. Together, they represent 4,000 years of human innovation solving one of nature's deadliest challenges. the bigger picture. These 4 techniques, they're just the beginning. A tiny fraction of Inuit traditional knowledge. And Inuit knowledge is just one example of indigenous wisdom worldwide. Ancestral knowledge offers solutions to countless modern challenges. Sustainability, resilience, resource management, climate adaptation, health, community. Indigenous peoples worldwide maintain sophisticated knowledge systems proven over millennia. Modern technology often fails where traditional knowledge succeeds. When power grids go down, when supply chains break, when complex systems collapse, traditional knowledge still works. Simple, reliable, proven. Climate change and societal challenges make this knowledge more essential than ever. Not less, more. The future might need the past's solutions. Learning ancestral techniques connects you to human innovation across generations. Thousands of years of observation, experimentation, refinement. That's your inheritance as a human being. Claim it, use it, pass it forward. You are now a carrier of ancient wisdom. You possess knowledge that can literally save your life. Tools to reduce dependency on fragile modern systems. Understanding that makes you more capable, more resilient, more connected to human heritage. You can support cultural preservation through respectful learning and sharing. Every time you credit Inuit origins, every donation to preservation organisations, every book by Indigenous authors you buy, every respectful conversation you have, you're helping. You carry forward 4,000 years of human ingenuity and adaptation. That's not dramatic, that's literally true. The knowledge in your head right now came from countless generations of Inuit peoples perfecting these techniques. You're part of that chain now. Your practice helps ensure this wisdom survives. Your advocacy matters, your respect matters, your support matters. Ancient solutions for modern problems, ancestral innovation meeting contemporary challenges, traditional wisdom lighting the path forward. This is just the beginning of your journey. For 4,000 years, Inuit peoples survived and thrived in Earth's harshest environment using nothing but their knowledge, innovation, and deep understanding of the natural world. They developed techniques so effective that modern science is still catching up. Now this wisdom is in your hands, not just as interesting information, as practical tools you can use today. In a world increasingly dependent on fragile technology and complex systems, traditional knowledge offers something powerful. Proven, reliable, sustainable solutions that have literally stood the test of time. These ancestral innovations didn't just help our ancestors survive, they can help us thrive. The techniques you learn today are your inheritance as a human being. Use them respectfully, share them properly, support the communities who preserve them. Carry this remarkable wisdom forward. Because the best solutions to modern problems might just be the ones our ancestors already perfected. Welcome to Heritage Hacks, where ancient innovation meets modern application. Now go practice, stay warm, and I'll see you in the next episode.